what's with this gift-giving thing, because I have very mixed feelings about it, to be very honest. When it comes around Christmas time, I'm very grateful I have children that Corley and I have indoctrinated so that they're not super obsessed about gifts. But even so, I don't get nagged in October already, what am I getting for Christmas? But I know many people who are going through that, and even though my children are very, very gracious, come Christmas time, I'm thinking, what are we getting them? Gift giving is not everybody's love language. But I've noticed that it is definitely for my daughter. So she's like, early on, she's like, what do you want? What do you want? You need to give me choices, and she'll make a little list, right? These are and it's like one thing isn't good enough. So at least 3 things on the list. Then she'll go around, she'll get a list from Corley, and she'll get a list from her brother, and so on. Sometimes I experience a level of tension, right? What size does this gift have to be, right? And where is it in the budget? And is this really what Christmas is about? And so at some stage we taught them to give gifts of service. You can give me a little piece of paper that you sign, little tear of slips, so many coffee favors or so many gardening favors, right? Or mowing the lawn, right? That's a form of gift. A massage every now and again. Hey, you see. Right? So that's one way of getting around the financial implications of this gift giving, because it gets expensive, right? Aren't we missing the point if it's all about gifts? Aren't we missing the point of Christmas? And by the way, yes, I know Jesus wasn't born on Christmas Day. We know. But we're going to celebrate him in any case, right? We like him. If you're not with somebody on their birthday, then later when you get to see them, you celebrate in any case. So, okay, just take it that way, right? Don't have any heart attacks, I know. But this gift-giving thing, where did it all begin? Well, it's all the fault of those supposedly wise men. They're the troublemakers that started this whole gift-giving thing. So I have questions about those wise men, how wise they were. Because the consequences of what they did is reverberating until today. In your pocket maybe, in your bank account. Let's look at that story. This is only in the Gospel of Matthew. But it reveals something very important. And it helps you to understand, making a match between what's being said here in Matthew and what's said in Luke. Because have you ever thought about it? The way that we've been raised, the way that the story is always told is everything happened on the same night. The shepherds come, the star appears, the angels had sung and told the shepherds come and they worship Jesus. And then at that same night, the wise men show up, and they worship Jesus. And then that same night, Joseph is told to take them and then they run away. And then that same night, the soldiers come and they kill the babies. And then you read Luke, and then it says after Jesus was born, they went up to Jerusalem and had him circumcised on the 7th day according to the law of Moses. And then they went back to Nazareth, and you're going like, wait, what? Which is it now? Are they in Egypt, or what's going on? What's happening here? Let's actually read what the Bible says. Matthew 2, verse 1. Let's just read the first word in the sentence. After. Everybody with me? After Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of King Herod, wise men from the east arrived in Jerusalem. When did the wise men arrive in Jerusalem? After. And they didn't even arrive in Bethlehem. They arrived in Jerusalem. And then a bunch of stuff happens, right? So the wise men from the east, by the way, who were these wise men? They came from the east. Guess what's east of Jerusalem? The country that's to the east is Mesopotamia, that contains modern-day Iran and Iraq. All right, that area between the rivers. So these were probably Jewish people that were the descendants of people that had been taken away in captivity, and these people didn't come back. Their ancestors chose not to return to Jerusalem. But they were still Israelites, they were still Jews, they still worshipped God, they still kept the faith. But remember, it was the smart, intelligent people that were taken away in captivity and were given positions in the administration. So these people ended up in government jobs, right? In good positions of power, and they were regarded as valuable because they were educated. And so they passed that education on to their children and their children's children. So this is why they never went back, because they settled in the Babylonian Empire and all those cities. So these were the wise men. Wise men, and it doesn't say 3. Did you notice? It doesn't say there were 3 of them. Did you also notice it didn't say there were kings? Please show me the verse where it says it was 3 kings from the east. We don't know how many there were, but there were enough of them that when they arrived in Jerusalem, it caused a ruckus. Because they said, where is he who has been born? King of the Jews, for we saw his star rising, and we've come to worship him. And of course, Herod's not happy. It says in verse 3, Herod was disturbed and all Jerusalem with him. Now, 3 guys on camels, probably not going to cause that kind of a ruckus, right? So there was probably a large group of them. A whole delegation from Babylon had come. Because they'd been looking at the prophecies from the Old Testament. Right? And somehow they figured out certain stars in alignment would be the sign that the Messiah had come. You know the story. They foolishly tell Herod why they're there. Then they see that the star is moving. It's a weird thing. They hear they consult with the other wise people in Jerusalem. They say, it's in Bethlehem that the Messiah would be born. And so they follow the star. They go look in Bethlehem, and the star goes and stands over a particular house. That's quite important. Did you notice it didn't say over the stable? Jesus wasn't in the stable anymore. He wasn't in the manger anymore. The shepherds found him in the manger, in the stall. But they'd now moved, they'd settled in Bethlehem. They'd moved from Nazareth, and they'd now settled as a family in Bethlehem. And the star stopped over the house. And then verse 10 says this, when they saw the star, they were overwhelmed with joy. When we give gifts, it should not be something that we do because we have to. You know what I mean by that? And it is that kind of body language. I have to. Anything that you do because you have to, it's not good. If you obey your parents because you have to, do you think you're blessing your parents? Come on. Those of you that are parents, do you get joy out of it when your child obeys you, but it's with that attitude? No. It sucks all the joy out of it. When you do something because you want to, it's with a completely different attitude. They're coming to give a gift or to give gifts because they acknowledge the value of what God is doing. When you give to God, it's because you see the value in what He's doing. This is why a grudging gift is not acceptable. Do you know that the New Testament says that? We should not be giving grudgingly. That's where that verse comes from. God loves a cheerful giver. Do you see? When they saw the star, now they know they're at the end of their search and they were overwhelmed with joy. It was a happy thing. Giving a gift should make you happy as much as it makes the person that you give it to happy. I wonder about God giving Jesus. I wonder if God wasn't also overjoyed to give. Not to give Jesus, to send Him from heaven to earth. This was heaven's best. This was God made manifest. You know, we read from the rest of the scriptures that the Father had always loved the Son. The Son had always loved the Father. There was this continual flow between the Father and the Son through the Holy Spirit. Now Jesus was going to leave, take on flesh. It's a big gift. I think God was happy. He was happy to give Jesus. Because He saw you and me Hebrews says, for the joy that was set before him, Jesus despised the shame. And that's not just the shame of the cross. For God himself to come and be limited to flesh. That's such a fall. You know, some people are too proud to do certain things. I've got this qualification, I've got that qualification. God may never be that I have to, and then fill in the blank. What do you consider to be beneath you? What job is it that you don't want to do? As far as you might imagine that you can come down from where you are right now or where you've been, I promise you, from heaven down to earth, it's further. For God to give Jesus, we forget. We celebrate the story every year. We hear God became flesh, and it rolls off the tongue so easily because we've said it so many times. We forget, what does this mean? What job have your employer asked you to do that you thought, eesh, you know, I didn't go to university to, right? I didn't study all those years to. I don't have all this experience just to, right? You know what that feels like? It's like, ugh, that's a little beneath me. I promise you, earth is a way, way, way further distance beneath heaven than that. And yet he came, he gave himself willingly. He despised the shame and took up the cross. So that's even further down. For the joy that was set before him. Jesus did it happily. Don't tell me he enjoyed the process of being limited. If you were limitless and now you are limited, you've never experienced pain or hunger, and now you're in a human body. And guess what? In this human body, you experience pain and hunger. Alright? And difficulty. But he did it for the joy that was before him. But there was a purpose, you see. The joy was that people would come to know him. People in the image of God would be restored to the image of God. That's the joy. There was purpose in the giving. It wasn't just to give something to make sure that I tick the box and somebody got a gift, you know. Sometimes Christmas gifts or birthday gifts end up being giving stuff to people that they don't need just so that you can say that I gave them something. Yeah, like a cigarette lighter for somebody that doesn't smoke. Yeah, because I forgot. Right? So I ran into the shop and the first thing that I saw. Do you understand? Have you gotten gifts like that? Don't look at the person next to you. They're probably the one that gave you one of those, right? When God gave, it wasn't just to give you a dust gatherer to sit on the shelf. That's what my wife calls all these little things that people collect in their houses that sit on the shelves. They're dust gatherers. They fulfill no particular purpose, right? Except to give you work to clean that sucker. As she's getting older, she's starting to like dust gatherers more. Alright. God had purpose in mind when he gave. You see, when I know I give somebody something that they're going to use, they're going to appreciate it. They're going to use it. And it shows that I thought about them, because that's really what you're communicating, right? When you give a gift, you're actually showing when it's a thoughtful gift, it makes a difference. Instead of just a thing, a doodah, a woohoo, a doohickey, a thingamabob, right? It's different than if I give you something that shows I actually thought about you. I know something about you. I know what you like. And I saw you needed this and I got you that. It makes a difference, doesn't it? And when that person takes it and they appreciate it, doesn't that give you joy? When they saw the star over the house, they were overwhelmed with joy. And even though it was a difficult thing for God to do, I think he was overwhelmed with joy to give Jesus. Give him to us. And Jesus wasn't forced to come. He came willingly. It was for the joy that was set before him. There's function. There's purpose if you do the gift giving right. My encouragement to you is this Christmas, if you're going to do the gift giving. Remember, you don't have to. But if you're going to do the gift giving, do it right. Do it thoughtfully. And give joyfully. Because where the gift is willing, the gift is also accepted. So verse 11 says, entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and falling to their knees, they worshipped him. To give to God. To give of yourself to God. This is not about tithes and offerings. To give to God willingly. It's an act of worship. God doesn't need anything, but He wants us to be willing. We fall on our knees. When we fall on our knees, why do we do that? Why do we go down on our knees when we pray? Now, you can sit up and pray. You can lie in bed and pray. But why, when we take dedicated time, why do we go down on our knees? Because we're so independent, aren't we? We're so sure of ourselves and of our status and of the importance of being, stand strong, my son. Stand strong. Yes. But when you enter the presence of somebody greater than you, it's time to bend the knee, to say you are worthy. It's the one thing that we'll be doing until eternity. Submitting ourselves. When the 24 elders hear the angels cry out, holy, 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 they get off their thrones. They fall down on their knees and they throw their crowns before Him. They cry out, worthy. Worthy is the Lamb. Why? Why is the Lamb worthy? Because of this story that was playing out here. Because He was being given. And He willingly came. That's why the Lamb is worthy. These wise men were wise. Sometimes I have issues with the wise men because if you're so wise, why do you tell Herod, this killer of a king, who was already known as a killer, why do you tell him you're looking for the king of the Jews? How wise is that? And you start this gift-giving thing, and now we still have to give gifts. So I have issues with these wise men, but I have to acknowledge they were willing to come a long way to see the fulfillment of God's promises. That's wise. They were willing to say, I will leave my business and my government job and put in for unpaid leave and take months to go and find the Messiah simply to honor Him. That's wise. And when they found Him, they fell on their knees and they worshipped Him. That's wise. And they did it with joy. Sometimes when there is a sacrifice to be made in your spiritual life, people do it so grudgingly. It sucks all the blessing out of it. Whereas if you do it with joy, you can receive the full benefit out of what you've done. Verse 11. They opened their treasures, presented Him with gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. By the way, this is where the story comes from, that it was 3 wise men. Because they brought 3 kinds of gifts. So people went, okay, so the one guy brought gold and the other guy brought frankincense. Not frankfurters. And the other guy... And the third guy brought myrrh. They brought 3 kinds of gifts, but we don't know how many of them there were, right? Now, there's much to be said for the symbolism of all 3 of those gifts, for gold, frankincense, myrrh. The most common interpretations in terms of symbolism is that the gold signifies royalty, value, authority, virtue, right? Because gold has to be purified and heated up, and all the dross comes to the surface and is burnt off or poured off, right? So that you have pure gold. So gold is the symbol of purity and kingly authority. Yes, I guess so. No doubt. And then the frankincense and the myrrh both come from trees. But to get this, you have to actually cut the tree. And the sap comes out. The one that makes this beige crystal. That's the frankincense. And the myrrh makes a darkish brown crystal. These lumps of tree resin is dried out and either ground fine or in a certain size of crystal put in censers. And they're very useful. Frankincense actually has some medicinal properties that stimulate your immune system. So it brings down inflammation. It's an anti-inflammatory. You also put frankincense in a censer and burn it, because then it would smell nice. Right? It was one of the things that was used in the temple. Have you heard that phrase? the prayers of the saints arise like incense before the Lord. And that's from the book of Revelation. Also in the book of Acts, Cornelius is doing good deeds. Cornelius, your prayers and your alms giving has arisen like incense, and it has built an altar before the Lord. You see, that when he talks about that incense, that's actually frankincense. Right? That's where we get the word incense. Can you hear that? It's a symbol of prayer and it's dedication. And yes, that's definitely a symbol that you can draw from there. Myrrh is the one that actually signifies death or suffering. Its chemical properties is slightly similar to an opioid, so it can actually kill, deaden pain. And it also stops inflammation. And so they would use this in embalming because you would delay the onset of your body decay. You could say this is the symbol of, remember you cut that tree to make the resin come out. So this is that symbol of death or of suffering. And Jesus came to be that suffering servant for us. As beautiful as that is, in thinking about the symbolic and spiritual meaning of these gifts, we sometimes miss the very practical reason why these gifts were given. I'll tell you about that in a minute. The wise men had given a gift. Now, how did they get there? They saw a star. That was hard work, right? They have this wisdom passed on from generation to generation. They've been studying the scriptures and they've been looking at the stars and they've been pursuing the clues. It's as if they are looking to discover God. You see that? But when they find Him and they present their gifts, now God starts revealing Himself. Now they are warned in a dream. Now they're hearing from God. It's no longer me looking for God and what is God doing and studying and working. Now it is God actually revealing Himself. When we open our hand and say, I'm going to be gracious, God says, now you're in a position where you can receive. Isn't that what Jesus told us to pray to His Father? You forgive us even as we forgive. You see, as you are willing to forgive, you're extending grace. Now you're in a place to receive grace. You're not buying God's grace, but now you understand what it means. Now you can deal with grace properly. You see, I'm saying this is for free. You actually owe me, right? But I'm going to let you go and not require anything from you. Now I can receive something from God and not try to pay Him back. I say, I can't, lest I should think that I deserve anything that I receive from God. If I can't extend grace, usually I can't receive it either. Have you noticed this when you try to give people gifts? Oh, no, that's too much. That's too much. Why is it too much? Tell me why. Because you think you have to pay me back. See, that's why it's too much. Whenever you give a gift, if that's your attitude, oh no, that's too much. You can't. No, oh no, I'll feel bad if I take this. What you're telling me is each time that you give me a gift, you're actually hoping that at some stage I'll pay you back. Come on. Whereas if I freely and willingly give you a good gift, here it is. And it's a joy for me to give it to you. And now you go, oh no, I can't take it. You're sucking away my joy. Mm-hmm. Just take it, man. Or okay, if you're going to be like that, give it back. Isn't it? Extend grace. So that you can receive grace. So you can understand what it is that God did in the person of Jesus. He gave Him freely, knowing that you have no means ever repay. And He seems to be okay with that. So the wise men leave. An angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, get up. By the way, when did Joseph start receiving dreams? When did God start speaking to Joseph? When he was engaged to be married to Mary, and she was found to be with child, and according to the law, Joseph could have her stoned. Because he knew, she's not pregnant by me. But she's engaged to me, and I actually have a contract with her parents, and now she's pregnant, and Joseph could have her stoned. It says, being a good man, not wanting to make a public spectacle of her, he decided to put her away in secret. And then that night, the angel speaks to him and says, don't be afraid. Take Mary as your wife. See that? He extended grace. You could start to hear from God. And I promise you, Mary was a good wife. She was somebody that loved God. And I promise you, she was good to him. And Joseph had the privilege of helping to raise the Messiah. But he had to give grace first before he could receive grace. And the angel says to him again in this dream, get up, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt and stay there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to kill him. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night and escaped to Egypt. Don't miss this. The moment that God spoke, he got up. This isn't tomorrow. When it's convenient, I guess so. When God speaks, you move. When God is so gracious that he would speak to you without you deserving it, guess what you do? I'll pray about it, I think. I'll see whether or not the finances work out. I'll go and counsel with so-and-so. I'll go and ask so-and-so. What do they? I'll call Pastor Phil and we'll have a counseling session. We'll go to Reinald's restaurant and have a coffee and talk about it. If it's God, don't wait. Somebody else in the Bible that was known for this, Abraham. When God speaks, Abraham does it. When God speaks, Abraham does it. God says, leave your country. The next thing that you read, Abraham took his stuff and went. And then God says, go sacrifice your son, your only son, which actually was his second son, but God considered Isaac as the only son of promise. It says, early the next morning, Abraham got up. There's no waiting, no counseling, no wondering, no thinking about it. Abraham obeyed immediately, and he was a man of faith. In fact, we consider him the father of faith. Why? Because when God spoke, he obeyed promptly. When God gives you the gracious gift of speaking to you, it's time to respond. Now Joseph hears. Get up, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt and stay there. And that night, he takes the child and the mother and flees and goes to Egypt. But now they have to move. And moving costs money. How many of you have moved recently? It costs money. And there's no time for Joseph to liquidate his assets, sell the shop that he's just set up. Remember, they relocated from Nazareth to Bethlehem, and now they have to move again. That cost money. Maybe with the Nazareth move, he could first sell his shop and maybe have a little bit of startup capital. Well, not now. It's the middle of the night. He's going to have to get up and go now. And it's going to cost money to relocate. When they get to Egypt, they have to eat. They have to live somewhere. They have to set up the business again. He's not just going to sit on his hands. So it's going to cost money. But right before this command to go, what had happened? Somebody had brought some gifts. In fact, they got some gifts brought not just to their front door, but literally into their living room. Wise men came into the house and opened their treasures, and out of their treasures they gave them gold, frankincense, and myrrh. It's money. You can move it easily. Depending on the exchange rates, at some stages, frankincense and myrrh was worth more by weight than gold. And it's easy to transport. It's light. You just pop those things into the saddlebags on the donkey and there you go. And they could go and relocate and be safe. You see, there is symbolism and meaning and reason to the gold, the frankincense and myrrh. And as much as I value those things and those meanings, don't miss the practical reason why God had them bring these gifts. And when we practice giving, we need to also practice giving in a way that has meaning. God has purpose planned for everything that He does. And when we get to give the way that God gives, in obedience to God, we get to be part of what God is doing. These wise men, as many as there were of them, were part of what God was doing. And how did they become part of what God was doing? By giving. They gave in a meaningful way, maybe even more than what they understood. God was using them by giving through them. You can be part of the purposes of God, and may we be people that would be giving people that would give of our time and our effort, yes, of our money and of our emotion, and invest into people our affection and attention, and give freely. In the process, become part of what God is doing. Participate. There is meaning and purpose in living and giving